All right, guys, welcome back to this episode of the Customer Discovercast. I'm here with Nick on behalf of lode.one. This episode is about cryptocurrency. We're going to be speaking of the future of cryptocurrency as well as some kind of hot takes on the latest developments in the cryptocurrency space. Nick, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Ethan. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, man. For those that don't know who you are, most people don't right now. They will after this episode, but tell them a little bit about yourself and the company you work for.
Absolutely. So I work as a product designer and project manager for a company known as lode.one, as you rightly put it. Our main mission is tokenizing gold and silver into cryptocurrencies and making a more accessible, better form of money for people to get their hands on in the world today. And that's it in a nutshell. And there's a lot more to it, but we'll unpack that as the conversation evolves, my friend.
Absolutely, man. We can't wait to dive deep into it. But first, let's walk people through because everyone has, a certain degree of knowledge on cryptocurrency. Let's talk about what cryptocurrency is, debunk any myths around the difference between tokens and coins.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, a blockchain is a distributed ledger, which means it's shared across multiple computers, and they have what's called a consensus algorithm. This means all the computers basically have to agree with each other that something is taking place in order for the transaction to proceed, right? There has to be a consensus. And this is different from how things are presently done, where, as long as you have access to the code, somebody could go in and manipulate circumstances or, information to fit what's taking place. So it's immutable. That's what a word that you hear a lot in the industry. A blockchain is immutable, and that provides more transparency and confidence, and it also eliminates the need for trustworthy third parties in a lot of senses, like traditional institutions and banks. Which is why there's been so much disruption and talk around how this is going to impact the industry. So that's what a blockchain is, and from a high level there. The difference between tokens and coins is really, it's up in the air. You'll probably hear the word stablecoin thrown around most often with the nomenclature of coin behind it. Usually, that entails that there's something real backing the asset. It's not just a meme coin like Dogecoin or an asset that is a raw technology, with the exception of Bitcoin. But there's no hard definitive rules on it. But that's just one tool that most often I see when I look in the industry, is that coin is used to describe, or stable coin specifically is used to describe something with a real tangible asset behind it, versus tokens, which generally are raw technology.
Nice. That was beautifully said. Yeah, I didn't know that before you just explained that. So thank you for helping me. Thank you for helping the audience learn about that as well. So, one thing that's super exciting is that, you start to see these platforms start to develop their own digital currency. And now people are developing like the Justin coin and stuff like that. And you can invest in this person's career and stuff like that. Talk
Mhm.
about the use cases for cryptocurrency.
Well, I mean, the most common use case you see out there today is as an investment vehicle, right? I'm creating a coin for this project to fund my project. Give me your money, and you can treat this as something that you can send back and forth amongst each other with peer-to-peer trading or on an exchange, and you can speculate on the value of it. That is the most common use case for cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. But the implications of the technology are much bigger than that. You have institutions, again, banks and financial structures that have operated on the same technology that is, borderline obsolete for decades now, right? And blockchain technology brings that to the forefront. Platforms like Ethereum allow companies to build on top of blockchains to support their business use cases. So it's not just investment anymore. It's use cases for tracking commodities like what we do, right? Every one of our coins is backed by gold and silver, or real estate. Who owns land titles? Medical records was one I discussed on another podcast, right? So beyond just financial transactions and investments, use cases for blockchain are going to be valuable anywhere where a ledger or documentation and tracking and monitoring of a given topic or industry is of relevance. And that's what I look for when I look for cool projects to invest in or speculate on. Is there a real use case behind this coin, or is somebody just creating something that can be pumped and dumped into oblivion?
Absolutely. That's a great segue into what we kind of touched on earlier. What is the difference between, so, one thing people don't know, and this is really important to educate the public, okay? And this is definitely important for a soundbite when we're talking about, what's a good takeaway from this podcast. What's the difference between Dogecoin and Bitcoin in terms of scarcity?
Well, Bitcoin, and you'll have to forgive me here. I'm not intimately, informed on the specifics of Dogecoin. So if I say something wrong, hopefully nobody on the community there is too mad and I don't get any death threats. But Dogecoin is Dogecoin is essentially infinite versus Bitcoin, which was created by the anonymous, notorious Satoshi Nakamoto. There's a very finite amount of Bitcoin out there, making them incredibly scarce, and people like that scarcity, and they've chosen to put value in that scarcity. Versus Dogecoin, which will infinitely create currency, is the creator of the currency. It doesn't have any control over that, and he's actually received death threats over this because of that. But it's like you put the wheels in motion, the cat's out of the bag. You open Pandora's box and you can't put it back in. And so there's when people are looking at what's going on in the market now with Dogecoin, they need to bear in mind and understand how the technology works, or there's the real potential to get burnt there. That's really, really important.
Yeah. And that's one thing that, lode.one is essentially solving, right? Touch on that a little bit. We'll do a little big picture touch.
Yeah, for sure. So gold and silver have been used as money throughout most of man's history. Like we're dating back thousands of years here, right? And the U.S. dollar, in fact, was backed by gold and silver for the longest time as well. And then back in I think the 70s, they walked away from the gold standard to essentially invest so they make it so they could fund the Vietnam War, right? And what
Oh,
we've seen
really?
is a yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do your reading, do your own research, and again, if I'm wrong, forgive me. But my understanding as a Canadian is that that was a huge motivator as for why they navigated away from using the gold standard, because wars are expensive, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and but you and gold and silver have inherent value. Gold and silver are two of the biggest commodities in the world. Everything you and I are talking to each other on now has silver. The Teslas people are driving has silver, right? It is
Really?
such an important commodity in the world today that it doesn't, like, beyond the speculative value, like there is real value in silver. It's a
Mhm.
part of our everyday lives. Very similar situation with gold. And so what happened when we disconnected our money from things of real value? Well, the essentially the purchasing power of the dollar collapsed. I'm not talking like 1 or 2% here. Over the past 100 years, your dollar has lost 96% of your purchasing power. 96% is like crazy. That's why when you were a kid and you went to go buy a can of pop, it was $1, and now it's like $2. And by the time you have grandkids, it'll be like $3 or $4, right? And this is what's happened in countries around the world that use the fiat banking system. Is this collapse, this hyperinflation, which is really scary, right? So load was like, people need better money. How do we make that happen? And we used the new technology of blockchain and married it with the standard that has really stood the test of time. And from that, the Load project was born. So that's just a very surface level touch on the topic. Hopefully, it addressed what you're looking for there.
Yeah, and the interesting part, the more I've had to ask you that a few times to really understand it, right? Because cryptocurrency is something that I'm familiar with. I'm definitely not an expert in. I'm familiar with it from people like you and friends that are very passionate about it and do deep dives into the future development of it. But one thing that I'm starting to gather my thoughts about is that what you provide is it's much more easily understandable than Bitcoin or Dogecoin or the other cryptocurrencies, or was it not Ethereum? I think I was thinking of
Ethereum.
Ethereum. Yeah. But what I'm getting at is you're a good segue from the traditional model of how the dollar was initially backed to the full spectrum of going straight to Bitcoin or the other tokens. You guys have like a perfect segue in between, which is kind of like a stable coin, if I'm understanding correctly, right?
That's correct. Yeah, AGX and AUX would be defined as stable coins, and yeah, that's part of it, right? There's a lot of uncertainty for people about bridging that gap over to blockchain, and we make that simple. We take an asset that's really well understood, and we provide it on a new platform so that you can treat this as currency if you want, or treat it as the same old gold and silver that you have collecting dust in a sock drawer. But now you don't need to have that burden of having to take care of the physical metal. Our assets are redeemable for the physical metal. It's just a new way of presenting this asset and making it much easier and more affordable for people to access, because there's already price manipulation in gold and silver in traditional markets, and the retail costs of gold and silver in the physical market are colossal. I'm talking like spot price will be 50% lower in some cases than what you'll pay for at a retailer, right? So we can cut out the middleman there and provide people a much affordable access to these commodities and to these tools, to these financial tools.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want a little hot take. I want a little, insight. Give me a little sneak peek into,
Yeah.
like, why would Tesla buy $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin? What is the potential use case for them? Of course, they drive up the value, and now they're accepting payment. They used to accept payment in Apple Pay. They still do, but like, what does that mean for the cryptocurrency world now that like a
Uh,
major corporation is doing this?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. I mean, I like hot take here. Elon Musk is, the heartthrob of the internet Reddit space. He's got and he's done stuff like this before. Everything from flamethrowers to intentionally trying to take his own company private again by buying back his own stock and trying to drive the price down. And he's been caught red-handed with this. So, I do feel like there's an element of Elon's playfulness going into this. But on a larger macro perspective, I think this shows that the industry at large, the commercial industry at large, and not just the financial industry, is starting to come around to the idea that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are in fact legitimate forms of currency, and it shows a certain maturity in the market that wasn't there in 2017. I think there's always going to be that when Lambo, when Moon type attitude, which is fun, but it's comforting to see that these big players are now saying that yes, you can go in with Bitcoin, and I firmly believe that Bitcoin is just the start, right? Bitcoin is great as a store of value, but you could lose 40% in a night, right?
Yeah.
So for trading commerce, that's terrible. How are you supposed to set your prices when you know zero point 0.1 Bitcoin could have wildly different values from day to day? So
Sketchy.
it opens the door for opportunities like stable coins, like what we're doing, and beyond. So for me, it's a really really good signal. And Tesla isn't the only one, right? Like PayPal, I think is to me it signifies a much more important symbol of the same maturity that I was just talking about there, because this is one of the biggest payment platforms in the world now saying, hey, we will give you the ability to accept this as part of the vehicle that we provide.
Yeah. Funny that Elon had a big role in PayPal as well. But
Yeah.
to divert from that, because I don't want to be an Elon fanboy like pretty much everyone I know as well. But um, one thing that's interesting is like an analogy that may help people that are currently in the stock market and maybe dabbling into crypto is like Bitcoin seems like that hot, sexy stock that you can buy that you could get rich overnight. You could also get burned overnight. And it sounds like Lodecoin is kind of like that index fund, almost that S&P 500, where it's like it's safe, it's secure. You can perhaps one day park your retirement in that. It's kind of like a Roth IRA, not the vehicle channel, but the kind of overall selling point of it.
Look, you can talk to, I am not a financial advisor, so there's limits on what I can say, but I can say this: gold and silver are part of almost everybody's portfolio, whether you're a hedge fund manager or you're just a retail investor across the board. These assets are tried and proven, and during financial crisis, people flock to these things.
Hmm.
They are, by all intents and purposes, considered stable. And so my encouragement is, I'm not saying you need to throw, bet the farm and remortgage your house on this, but when it comes to taking some wins from your Bitcoin, and where am I going to put that, right? Are you going to put that in your US dollar, which is going to lose money year after year? or lose purchasing power year after year, or are you going to stick it into an asset that is stabilized like gold and silver, and have the comfort that those prices will remain moderately stable, right? And that's really the big selling feature here, is it's a way for you to preserve your wealth and protect your wealth over a longer period of time from the volatility that you see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really well said, and that's one thing I was going to ask you as well. And you covered this as well, but feel free to dive deep. And I'll ask questions periodically, but like, is Bitcoin a good investment? I know it's highly speculative. What cryptocurrencies are a good investment? Of course, touched on why lode.one is a good investment, and we talked about that, but talk about that for someone that's like, yeah, I want to park $1,000 in Bitcoin. Are there better alternatives? And then, Lodecoin's role in that as well.
Well, I'm just one man, and again, not a financial advisor. There are people who dedicate their whole careers to this speculation, so bear that in mind. But based on my understanding, based on my 4 or 5 years in the industry, specifically dealing with blockchain technologies, and a decade of experience in the tech sector, I would still say that Bitcoin and Ethereum are really strong investments. I would say that at this point in time, in the market psychology, right now we're in a bull market, and everybody is a genius in a bull market, because what a bull market is generally that the market is trending upwards. So, you could take shitcoin and invest in shitcoin, and the probabilities are in your favor that shitcoin is going to go up. Doesn't mean that shitcoin is a good long-term investment. Sorry, pardon my French.
Because it'll probably be the first to go, right?
Right. It'll probably be the first to go. So, when you're making investments, bear in mind where in the market cycle we are. I think as a long-term investment, Bitcoin still has a ton of room to grow, tons of room. I do think the 100K, price tags that people are setting on Bitcoin and beyond are realistic, so long as people continue to have enthusiasm for Bitcoin and its scarcity and its technology. And it has that advantage of being the first mover to the space,
Mm.
right? Beyond that, what I think personally is a stronger investment is Ethereum, because Ethereum, while sometimes you've heard Bitcoin referred to as digital gold,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ethereum provides real utility. It allows people to build on top of blockchain technology, of distributed ledger technology, and execute on what's known as smart contracts, which provide
Mm.
additional functionality beyond simple send and receive. It's almost like an operating system for a blockchain, if I'm using metaphors, right? It's almost like an operating system for a blockchain, and this means that all the companies and institutions around the world can use this operating system to build their blockchain solution, to build their asset for investing in themselves or in their company, right. And so to me, that screams of Apple before the iPhone, just before the iPhone, right? Like, we all wish we got in on that one,
Right.
because Apple absolutely exploded. And so I think Ethereum is highly undervalued right now, even at its
Mm.
mark of around 1800 as of we're recording this. um you know uh and to me, I see the greatest potential for growth from there. It's also relatively still affordable, whereas what you're going to get for $1,000 of Bitcoin versus what you'll get for $1,000 of Ethereum is significantly different. So, that may sound boring. There are a lot of other interesting projects in on out there in the world, but aside from my obvious bias towards what we're doing, um, I would say that the safe bets in the industry are on those two top players easily.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
for a beginner, that's all you need,
Mm.
right? The
That's a good
appreciations are pretty
introduction to it,
colossal.
right?
Exactly. Dip your feet, get comfortable with what you're doing, get a baseline understanding of the technology, and then use your critical thinking skills to take a look at these projects. Where are they really applying it, and is there a real use case here? um,
Yeah.
and if you want to drop $100 on some Dogecoin, you know what, go for it.
Go for it, buddy. Yeah. I've heard so much about Ethereum from the more trustworthy members of my community, like the ones that are software developers, and they just took, jobs with blockchain companies to build, different use cases using Ethereum in the back. I'm fumbling over my words because I don't know the specific methodologies for development building on Ethereum, but I've just seen that, real estate agents and other trade professionals are starting to shift towards it and starting to dabble their feet in using Ethereum for, different vessels. But I would love to learn more, and that's super exciting for you to bring that up and tell us like that's something that's kind of living in the shadow of Bitcoin right now.
It is to an extent. Definitely, it's not as much in the hype cycle as Bitcoin is, but it's a matter of tortoise and the hare, and I think there are multiple tortoises in the race. For their use cases. I think when it comes to providing people stabilized assets for trade and commerce, I think we're a really solid contender for that. When it comes to providing an operating system for people to build useful blockchain applications on top of and useful blockchain tokens from, I think Ethereum is one of the best contenders out there, hands down. And Bitcoin hopefully will be show itself to be a solid store of value and not just a bubble or a pump and dump cycle.
Exactly. Yeah, man. And what's the best way to invest in these cryptocurrencies? I know we have like was it Coinbase? I've used Coinbase before. Is there, a better trading platform that you would recommend?
Well, I mean, if you're looking to dip your toes into the market and just sort of test the waters and see how you feel with it, I'm gonna just go out and say head over to lode.one and create an account in 5 minutes. Something that you're gonna get with us that you're not gonna get with major exchanges out there is one-to-one personal support. Like,
Okay.
if you're looking to have a real conversation with a person, get some comfort, and get started really quickly, that's a great solution for beginning your journey. Making your switch is one of our themes. If you're just, what, like, shoot for the moon, let's go. Coinbase, Binance, these are all really easily accessible exchanges that you can go ahead and get an account started almost instantly and begin your process of purchasing. What I will say across the board is something that people may feel a little uncertain with if they're not like heavy investors already is this idea of KYC that happens when you come onto a platform like this, a financial platform. This is called Know Your Client, and they'll ask for things like your passport or a selfie. Don't worry, this isn't Facebook. Nobody is reselling your data. Nobody is, trying to make a buck off your information. What this is there for is to protect you from identity theft, the project from potential fraud, as well as yourself, and make sure that you're not a bad actor in the space, right?
Nice.
Yeah, it's there. So don't be intimidated by that. It literally takes like 20 seconds to get it done, and then your journey can begin.
Nice. No, that's super valuable. Yeah. It's sketchy just because it's unfamiliar for a lot of people, but it seems like a much more secure method of payment. Like credit cards are, subject to fraud all the time, debit cards as well. And it's kind of sketchy as well. Like, for example, I moved up to New York a while ago, and like after living there for I think it was 3 months, one day I went to go buy something. I was actually going out on a date later that night to Little Italy for the first time, and like I was going to pay for dinner and everything. And I remember earlier that day I went to go buy something. They were like, "Your card's declined." I was like, "What do you mean?" Well, because I lived up there for a certain amount of time, 3 months, by the way, right? Because I'll get
Yeah.
back to why that's important. 3 months. They were like, "Well, I think someone stole your card. Your address is in Virginia, but there's been a lot of purchases in New York, so we froze your card." I'm like, really? Like, I guess one, I forgot to switch my billing address, but two, they waited 3 months before they would cancel my card.
All right,
So
right.
how can cryptocurrency forget that? And luckily, I have my credit card, so I was still able to pay for the date and whatnot. And that was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Actually, you touched on something really, really important there, which is the idea of having full autonomy over your money. Why do you need a third party like an institution, which is full of people who are flawed, like you and me, keeping an eye over your money that you earned? Why should they have any say where you spend that, and what you spend that on, provided it's within the limits of the law? And when you have that kind of gatekeeping, it can be really terrifying, right? Like, I remember I was in Asia traveling a few years back, and a similar thing happened. But with cryptocurrency, you have full autonomy over your cash, right? This idea of having private keys, there is no middleman between you and your money. You can't. A couple years back, the French committed a run on the bank. People couldn't get their money out because banks do what's called, fractional reserve banking, right? In this situation, your Bitcoin is your Bitcoin, your AGX, your AUX is your AGUX, and nobody has any authority to use them unless you give them that authority, right? Um, there are platforms out there where you can earn interest for putting your money into their platform, and that's fine. But generally, if you just have a regular crypto wallet, you have full autonomy, full responsibility over your cash, and nobody can hack it so long as you don't put your private key on the web for somebody to discover. So as long as you keep that information confidential, that's an important piece of security and confidence that you can have that existing technologies like credit cards don't provide you.
Gotcha. Wow. Yeah, it's very exciting. I always want to say, that something that we talked about, that we're both gamers, right?
Yeah.
And I love playing. I play like Call of Duty Warzone, and there's in-app purchases. Okay, you kind
Mhm.
of see where I'm going with this. Fortnite kind of familiar. Fortnite really was like, I feel like the best to ever do this as far as a free game. Tied it into pop culture, and then had these in-app skins and buys that they could do. And it's going to
Mhm.
be interesting because they have like V-Bucks, right, for cryptocurrency. And, Call of Duty has COD points. It's going to
Mhm.
be interesting, really interesting to see how people can earn in-app currency. I don't know if there's a use case for Ethereum in this to earn in-app currency through like certain actions, the same way that
This
they do it with COD points and stuff like that.
there are projects out there that are specifically looking at this use case, and really any cryptocurrency can be embedded into a video game potentially. Ethereum in this particular use case might not be the best to go with, but certainly there's a lot of application within the gaming industry for blockchain technology. Um, yeah, I mean,
It's
I
exciting.
had a yeah, it is exciting stuff. I had a couple more points on that, but it seems to have escaped me there.
No
Um,
worries.
yeah, but ultimately the gaming industry and cryptocurrencies, they do go hand in hand. One currency that's kind of doing a similar thing to what they're doing with video games is the basic attention token. The Brave browser that's out there, it's not a video game, but they've taken the whole model of advertising and flipped it on its head, where people are getting compensated for watching advertisements versus
Really?
something like YouTube, which kind of just tells you to sit down and shut up and watch, right?
Exactly.
Right? They're demonetizing creators left and right these days.
Hmm.
Um, and and versus something like this, where it's like every time you click on an ad, you're getting compensated. So there are lots of different vehicles and lots of different platforms that can utilize cryptocurrency. And I remember the point I wanted to make here. Um, the point systems that you're talking about, the COD points and all of that, it's really going back to the days of air miles, right? And credit card rewards. These are some of the first programs to have digital currencies. And what's going to be interesting is how they can take those digital currencies that they have in game and put them out into the real world for buying and selling and generating a secondary market. That's why air miles these days actually are considered a currency, is because you can actually trade them for physical cash out there.
Right. Yeah.
They're not very valuable, mind you, but nevertheless, if you're a pro gamer and you're just racking up the points, like it would be incredible to be able to take that experience and reward from the game and then transition that into real capital.
Yeah. And maybe, like these games can have partnerships with other suppliers, or, there's partnerships with like G Fuel and, different kind of controllers and equipment and Logitech equipment. And
Mhm.
it would be interesting to see how, maybe you earn a certain amount of points, and due to their partnership, you can spend that in-app currency on, another brand's products, because that currency is accepted within a gaming community, right? You can really
Exactly.
create niche currency for, whether it's the gaming community or the legal community. Like that really, that's kind of that decentralized format, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can create entire ecosystems. The blockchain side of that isn't necessarily a must have in order for that vision that you've just described to become a success. But where the blockchain comes in is in providing certainty for those partnerships that yes, this transaction did occur. No, somebody did not game the system. There's no saying, there's no double spend, right? There's no possibility of somebody doing a chargeback saying I didn't get the product. It's like, well, no, you definitely did. You
Our
definitely
computer tells
did.
us you did. Yeah.
Yeah. The 40,000 computers that are processing this transaction have told us that yes, you did, right?
Yeah.
And that's where blockchain becomes valuable in those ecosystems and in those use cases.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. And now, we've talked about a good bit of information, and that was great. I would love to have you back on as well to speak about any newest developments in cryptocurrency. But for now, I want you to tell people more about, you guys have things planned for lode.one, and I want you to tell them, how can they find out more? What do you guys have in the pipeline? And tell them how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the most exciting things that I'm really looking forward to after 3.5 years building this project is the fact that we're going to be the world's first silver-backed stablecoin on a regulated exchange. That's huge. That's massive. And so for me, that's a personal accomplishment. Very, very excited for that. Now, where can you find us? We're very easy to find on all your favorite social media channels. Load Pay Media is how we go by. I generally act, for better or worse, as the news anchor, so you can have a laugh at my videos and start to learn about digital gold and silver and how it can make your life better. And then if you're ready to have a real conversation and start switching to a better form of money that's going to preserve your wealth for generations to come, then head over to lode.one, create an account, and download our mobile wallet and have some conversations with me, and start stacking your gold and silver. It's that easy.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, that was great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And you gave a lot of great information about your business right there. But now tell people how they can personally get in touch with you. I heard about the media channel, but do you have a personal email that they can get in touch with?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out to me either on Twitter at Nicholas Prouten, just straight up my name. No need to be fancy about it. You can find me on Telegram at ThinkDank. That's Dank as DANK, not Tank. And then you can also just send me an email at NICK P, so Nick P at lode.one.
Okay, say that
That's
one more
it.
time because I think the audio went out a little bit.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so my email is nickp at lode.one.
Awesome.
And that'll be a main line to any questions you might have.
Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Nick, thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Absolutely looking forward to it, and take care.
Awesome.